Before we get this video started, I wanted to let y'all know I will be having an auction on Friday, May 17th. This is one of the pieces that will be in there. I'm in mad varnishing mode. Awesome 3D effects going on here. Little color shifting action. I love this piece. I love the colors in it. I love how soft it is. I love the bling, the 3D effects of that center. But there will be a bunch of pieces in this auction. I haven't had an auction in a year, so I have lots of pieces. All this color shift. All the bling. Again, the auction will be Friday, May 17th. Keep an eye out for more previews of paintings that will be in the auction. I will be showing those on my Facebook page, The Glassy Knoll. You can find the link to that in the description. And perhaps I will also be showing some videos on maybe TikTok. I don't know. But the Glassy Knoll is definitely the best place to see what will be in the auction. But there it is. And now back to our regularly scheduled program. Hey everybody, Gina DeLuca here. All right, so today I'm going to be using these paints these are the same paints that I used in my last video and last painting, which is this. And I loved how these colors worked together. And I wanted to do a bigger painting with some fresh copper because this was on the older side. But I wanted to do a traditional straight pour instead of this style. And it's really hard to appreciate the bling factor on this because it needs to be varnished. I use Floetrol so it dries flat, but there is some beautiful bling going on there. And I wanted to just try this in a traditional straight pour to see how these pigments react. Let's see what's going on here. To mix these pigments, so this and this are pigments. These are this Little Piggy in Bloodstone and Wild Atlantic. To mix those pigments, I started off with a bit of the Josonja gloss varnish in the bottom of my cup, added the pigment to that while I was wearing a mask. Very important, please wear a mask. When those pigments become airborne, they get into your lungs, it does not come out. You don't want that stuff sitting in your lungs for the rest of your life. Especially don't want it building up. So just wear a mask. It's easy. We all still have them, right? So once the pigment is mixed with the Josonja varnish, I add some TriArt modeling paste. This is matte modeling paste. Matte paint, when mixed with a glossier paint, has a tendency to sell. I am mixing that with the Josonja gloss varnish, so I don't know if it's going to make it matte enough. Perhaps I will try to mix some of this up with a matte varnish and see if that makes a difference from how this turns out. Whatever that'll be, we'll find out. But yeah, so I mixed the pigment and Josonja with the modeling paste and basically get it to a consistency of a tube paint. And then I add Floetrol to it and just treat it like any of my other paints. The other paints I am using for my background / base coat, I have Artist Loft Unbleached Titanium. I have here copper from DecoArt Americana Decor Metallics in copper. This is a fresh jar, so I anticipate getting some good sales. And this here, this color, this is actually the remnants of a scraped painting There's all manner of paints in there. There are some DecoArt paints in there. Don't know if it's enough to make it sell, but it's a pretty color. It's a different shade than the Bloodstone. The Bloodstone is going to dry darker than how that looks there. The Floetrol does make it appear a bit lighter. So this will be a lighter shade of brown than that. Those are our colors. I'm going to be doing a regular straight pour today. Nothing fancy about it. I want to see how these paints really react without the accoutrement of turning it into a flower. I just want to see the pure reaction of these paints together. Before we get started, have you seen the Fluid Art inspiration cards? If you have, you can fast forward about a minute, but if you have not, what we have are 52 cards. There are 42 technique cards, and each technique card has an associated video here on YouTube that gives you all of the information that you need, the exact paint brand, color, consistency, the recipe, and of course the technique, all of the things that I can't fit onto a card. This is the painting in that particular video. This box here contains a tip for that particular technique. Here at the bottom, you have the color palette that was used in this painting, and then these two boxes can be used together as the basis of a two-color palette or build off of those colors. And there are 8 bonus color palette cards. Each one has 5 color palettes. You can use all of the colors or just some of the colors. Mix and match the bonus color palette cards with the technique cards, and you have more combinations than you could ever paint in a lifetime. These are available at my website, GinaDeLuca.net, and also at Amazon.com. The consistency of these paints, I am working with about a 2 on my consistency scale. It is making a mound, but it disappears pretty quickly. It is making a nice, thin, steady stream off of my stick. If it's getting thick and then thin and thick and thin, then your consistency is inconsistent and you need to mix some more. The first thing I'm going to do is put some paint in my pouring cup because I want to make sure that I have enough for my pour. There have been times where I've put more on my canvas than I needed and didn't have enough for my pour. And I am going to try to leave a bit in my cup for the end of my pour. Go in my cup last. You will notice I've already covered the edges of this canvas. I do that because I mix these paints pretty thin, and also I'm using Floetrol. That combination does not make for the best coverage on the sides of the canvas, and so sometimes you have a bit of that canvas showing through the paint. If I cover the edges first, I don't have to worry about it. I don't have to worry about touching it up later. There will be color there regardless of how my pour sticks to the sides. And it will be a homogeneous color. It's part of the pour. One of the reasons that I use a color in my base coat that is the same as my pour is sometimes you get little bubbles that can come up through your poured paint, through your puddle after you've stretched it out. You get little bubbles in your base coat that we will pop once it is laid down. However, sometimes you miss some. And then if they come up through your pour and it's not the same color as something in your painting, then it kind of looks funny. I don't have any white in this painting. If I were using a white base coat right now and I had white cells popping up through my painting, that wouldn't look very good. And I always lay down a base coat because I want my paints to slide around evenly. something has to stick to the canvas first. If it is not your base coat, it will be your poured paints. And some of the coolest stuff happens on the edge of your pour puddle. And this kind of ensures that you can keep that if you desire. But if you do not lay down a base coat first, then the edges of your poured puddle are going to be what sticks to the canvas. And the center of your pour puddle will be rolling over top of the edges. And that's how that works. I'm going to pop some of these bubbles. It's been a long time since I just tilted. I've been using that spinner so much. Going to check the consistency of all of my paints before I put them in my cup. The sauce may thicken upon standing, and often does. So even if I check this right before I started doing this video, I'm checking it again. Making sure we are good. All right. I will be pouring from this side. So I'm going to come in this way. Bit more of that blue because I really want that blue to come through. This is the leftover paints. I'm not pouring this from as high as I typically would, but I will do that on the last color, which is the copper, because I want that to sink all the way to the bottom. And then that will end up in the center of my pour. Whatever comes out of that cup last is probably going to end up being a focal point. And this bloodstone, I think, attached to that leftover paint last time and made for some very, very cool cells. Okay, and now the copper, which is just going to look amazing. Don't know if I poured that with quite enough plop. We shall see. And I'm going to take a bit of what is left, come over top of these other colors, because I want these cell making paints to have a paint to make cells with. And I know that this paint reacts. I do not like these cups, but that's what I'm working with today. All right. I'm going to pour in the center. This is a traditional straight pour, just pouring. I'm not doing any motions. I'm just going to let the paints do what they're going to do. As I get closer to the end of the cup, I will get closer to the canvas. This will give me a bit more control. Here comes the copper. Yay. I will do a bit of a design at the end here, just a little something something. Gotta have a focal point, you know. Some mild drips going on there. All right. Okay, now going to pop bubbles. So what happens here, the DecoArt copper, I know for sure, makes fantastic cells. Those paints dry matte. Matte paint, when put up next to a glossier paint, has a hydrophobic effect, meaning it pushes it away. Like if you put a drop of dish soap in some greasy water, it pushes that away. That's oleophobic, but same principle. So, when these cells pop up, when I pop these bubbles from the underlying layers, and the bubble comes up, it might have a little bit of paint with it. And if it is one of the cell making paints, it will grow. And that's what's happening. So I'm going to be patient, y'all. Be patient. If you want big cells, let the cells develop before you stretch your canvas, before you tilt or spin. If you let them develop first, then when you spin it, when you tilt it, they get bigger. I could just tilt this out right away and I will still get cells, and they will mostly be shaped like this. They will be that shape and they'll be all over the canvas, and that would be fine. But if I am patient and I let them develop first and then stretch them, you get these awesome 3D effects. That's how the boulder cells happen. And when I do a traditional straight pour, which is what this is, I typically get boulder cells on this side and pop-up cells on this side. The pop-up cells are basically, they kind of look like these cells, and they will just kind of appear along this edge where the paint gets stretched. I cannot tell you why it happens that way. But the way that I load the paint into my cup and the way that it comes out of the cup, that is just what happens with pretty strong predictability. So I'm letting these cells develop. You see more are coming up. This whole side is going to be copper boulder cells. It's going to look super cool. I think it's going to be beautiful next to that blue, which appears to be holding up. The bloodstone, some of that bloodstone is mixed in with some of this copper, it appears. Hoping some more of that comes up, because this, unfortunately, all of this on the edge, all of this bloodstone on the edge is going to get tilted off. But that does not mean that it has not blended and lying underneath, and that more of that will emerge as the painting develops. That's one of the cool things about these DecoArt paints, is you can use other paints with it, and that you know don't typically have cell making properties, and they will attach to each other, and then you get these very cool effects that can happen. This is a lot of paint, I do know. And I know a lot of people don't like to sit through this part. You can fast forward. It's okay. Not going to hurt my feelings. But the reason that I show this part in real time, I want you to know exactly how long I'm letting this sit. That is me being transparent. I could totally just fast forward through all of this and you wouldn't know that how long that sat, and then get really frustrated because you're not getting the same results because you don't know that I'm letting this sit for like 5 to 7 minutes sometimes longer. The first time I got boulder cells, it was an accident. My torch stopped working and I had walked away into another room to try to fix the torch before I tilted it out, and it was covered in cells. That was video 16, and that was the first time I got boulder cells, and that's when I learned, let it sit, let it develop, let it do its thing, and you can get some really magical things happening. Okay. All right, I think I've got enough cool stuff going on here now that I can give this a good stretch and get some awesome boulder cell action. Typically I go in this direction first. It really looks like it wants to go that way first, this direction, but I don't know that I want to do that. Okay, I have a piece of cardboard here. I'm going to use this as a little corner catcher. I don't want to tilt a whole lot of this off. That first corner is always kind of a doozy. And I don't want to lose too much of that. Now, patience is your friend. If you tilt too quickly, the paint will roll over top of itself. You want this to just crawl over top of your base coat. It is going to get a bit squinched up. It will stretch out again. But the corner catcher will help me to keep from losing too much of what's going on in that corner there. And I'm only going to be using it for that corner. Now, I'm going to come back into center, and I'm going to head over in this direction. Always bring the weight of your paint back to center before changing direction. That is going to help keep the shape of your cells. It will help to keep from getting those squiggly lines that we can sometimes get. Also, if you're getting squiggly lines, your paints might be different consistencies, and so one paint is moving faster than another. That's not something we want. Again, I realize that this isn't the most exciting thing, watching paint slowly crawl across the canvas. But I feel it is important for you to see just how slowly I'm actually tilting this. If I were to put this on high speed, you might think I'm whipping this around my canvas, which I am certainly not. All right, I see some schmutz. Let me bring this back just a little bit. Get that schmutz out of my painting. Get the schmutz as soon as you see it, or it will cause you grief later on. It can change the trajectory of your paint, and then it could leave a big old lump when it dries. Again, bringing the weight of the paint back to center before I change direction. The weight of the paint is going to be where your paint is moving the fastest. Some of my cells are getting a bit wonky. Believe it or not, I'm moving too quickly. All right, and then back across to the last corner. Last corner is usually pretty tough because it's a long way for the paint to go and a lot of it's been tilted off already. But again, patience, patience. In regards to a straight pour, patience will always yield the best results. I'm going to put a bit of what is left here. Just gonna zhuzh up this corner a little bit. It's been sitting for a while, so I'm just going to freshen it up. Doesn't hurt. So I can see right there. If your sides start to dry, like that can actually hinder your paint tilting off smoothly. It can kind of fight you a bit. So if it appears to not be flowing over very easily, check your sides. See if they need to be lubricated a bit. Okay. Back to the slow crawl. Again, being mindful of the weight of my paint and allowing that to push the paint around. You can get pretty precise if you're paying attention to the weight of your paint. I could tilt off just a bit in the center if I wanted, like right there. If I wanted to just tilt that off, I would be able to do that by paying attention to the weight of the paint. Okay. And once again, coming back to center. And then I will adjust for composition. Okay, so this is where my pop-up cells will happen. This is looking kind of boring here. I will get some pop-up cells there, but if I want to maximize the chances of me getting pop-up cells there, some people call them pearl cells, I call them pop-up cells, call them what you like. First, if I can get old Bernie 2 times, there we go. I'm gonna pop some of these bubbles just in this area. I'm not popping anything in these cells here. Popping some of those bubbles, and then I'm going to stretch this side by coming this way. And I can always come back but stretching this side will allow those cells to pop up easier. And I'm not really tilting anything off of this side right now. Not tilting anything off of here because that's not where the weight of my paint is. There might be a bit dripping off, but it's not pouring off. The idea is to stretch this area. Okay. All right, I got a little stretch in there. I see some action happening. These will all turn into some pop-up cells. Just touch the side there. Darn it. Well, I have to fix that. So these will develop as it sits, but I want to adjust my composition. This is my focal point and it's dead center, and I don't like that. So I'm going to use the rule of thirds here. If you don't know what that is, I highly recommend looking that up. It is one of the different forms of composition that you can use. Generally, I am either using the rule of thirds or Fibonacci. Okay. I think I'm going to let this sit. There is a spot in here that looks like an eye. Looks like a painted eye. Like, I'll show it to you in the close-up if it still looks like that. I don't want to stretch that. I think that looks so cool. Kind of creepy, but cool. Okay, so I'm going to let this sit. I'm going to let these cells develop, do what they're going to do. And I can see that this is the bloodstone has attached to something. But these are bloodstone cells popping up here. So very, very cool. All right. I'm going to let it sit, do what it's going to do. And I'll bring you in for a close-up. Back in a few. Okay, here it is. Some really beautiful colors going on there where that bloodstone attached to the copper. My goodness gracious, that is really beautiful. This has been drying overnight. As you can see, the edges have dried. And it's a good time to show you, it does dry kind of matte. And once you add the varnish, it will bring it back to life. But you can also kind of see on this edge here where it's dry, the cells are matte as opposed to that background color, which is glossy. That is what we're working with. Oh, let's see. That little spot right there looked like such an eye, but that cell popped up. It really looks like an eye there. But there it is. I hope you learned something. I hope you enjoyed. Please do like, share, and subscribe and all that good stuff. Do check out the description box below for links to my PayPal tip jar if you feel so inclined. There's also links to my affiliates, Fluid Art Company and DecoArt. Products being used in this painting, you can find them at those websites. If you use those coupon codes, use the links provided, I receive a small commission at no additional cost to you. You will also find the link to my website, GinaDeLuca.net, where you can find my art and music and fluid art inspiration cards for sale. And you will also find the link to our Facebook group, Go Make Some Art. Join us there, post your masterpieces, ask your questions, get some inspiration. A good time is had by most. Do keep your eye out for some of the paintings that will be appearing in my auction Friday, May 17th. Lots of beautiful pieces coming up. I haven't had an auction in a year, so lots of stuff coming at you. So do check out my Facebook page, Glassy Knoll. I will be posting the items that will be in the auction there. And I'll probably post them here in the community page as well. But there it is. I hope you learned something. I hope you enjoyed. Please do like, share, and subscribe and all that good stuff. That's it for me. I hope y'all have a beautiful day. Now go make some art.